Coutinho's bad transfer timing means Gerrard reunion is on the table. There is an awful lot of revisionism about Felipe Coutinho's decision to leave Liverpool for Barcelona. Like Michael Owen before him, who left the Reds for Real Madrid in the summer of 2004, the Brazilian could not have known what was to come next. As he and the rest of the world rubbed their eyes in disbelief, Owen saw the club he'd grown up at become one of the most surprising Champions League winners of this century in the year after he left. Then when he returned to Anfield with Newcastle on Boxing Day 2005, he was serenaded with chants of "Where were you in Istanbul?" Slightly more NSFW ones would follow when he would come back with Manchester United. For Coutinho, you suspect it was more about the club he was wanting to join rather than the state of Liverpool at the time, although that would have played a part. Having experienced the giddy child running down a hill before inevitably falling over season, that was 2013-14, a campaign in which Coutinho came of age as he operated in a side led by Luis Suarez, Daniel Sturridge and Steven Gerrard. It had become hard work for him in the 3.5 years that followed. Suarez was gone, for starters, and then Sturridge was injured, and Gerrard's final season became something of a grim farewell to as fans around the country wouldn't let him forget what had happened in the previous campaign. There was still a young Raheem Sterling, but with his contract discord rumbling along in the background, Coutinho was being asked to do an awful lot of the heavy lifting. The Brazilian is quite obviously supremely gifted, and he was Liverpool's top performer of the 2014-15 season, but we got to see what a Liverpool team looked like in which Coutinho was their best player and focal point. And it wasn't great. Going into the campaign, he had never scored more than 5 goals in a season, but suddenly he was being looked at as the main attacking outlet in a side who didn't have a reliable goalscorer. Instead they had Ricky Lambert, Mario Balotelli and Fabio Borini. It was the mess of a season that ultimately cost Brendan Rodgers his job, even if the departure was delayed, and perhaps the seeds were sown there for Coutinho. By summer 2015, Liverpool had begun to get used to seeing themselves used as a stepping stone to La Liga's Big Two, with Owen, Xabi Alonso, Javier Mascherano, and, most pertinently for Coutinho, Suarez all making the move in just over a decade. Torres and Sterling had shown that there were broader, more attractive horizons in England to explore too, and it was into this setting that Jurgen Klopp strode into in October 2015. It was why this move simply couldn't fail for fear of what on earth would come next. Klopp has not failed, he has spectacularly succeeded, but that took work. And you suspect that it was the uncertainty that this work would bear fruit which led to Coutinho's head being turned. He said as much himself, excitedly claiming upon arrival in Barcelona that "I really want to win big titles, it was one of the reasons that made me sign for the club. I want to win as many as I can, I don't have preferences." Under Klopp he'd lost in the 2016 League Cup and Europa League finals, with defeat in the latter meaning Liverpool did not play in European football at all in 2016-17, Klopp's first full season. You can trace so much of what the Reds do now back to the work put in that campaign, as the German had more time on the training pitch with his players and instilled the club's new way of working into them, and if Coutinho is guilty of anything it is not recognizing where this was going fast enough. Klopp was not going to fail, just look at him, but after Champions League football was secured at the end of 2016-17, Coutinho and his advisors led by Kia Joorabchian had made their minds up that he was making a Suarez-style exit, the type Liverpool had become used to, but were fast becoming obsolete under their new manager. It might be the biggest irony of Coutinho's odd career that the 2017-18 season remains his best ever, and probably always will be. It began with him going on strike, although complaining of a back injury, when the attempts to force through a move to Barcelona were failing. Klopp and Liverpool stuck to their sensible guns, and then when he was eventually returned to the fold he began to play some truly thrilling football behind a newly established front three of Roberto Firmino, Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah. Liverpool were electric, storming through their Champions League group and scoring goals for fun, even if it was obvious that goalkeeper and centre-back were the next two positions that needed addressing. Despite everything that had gone on, Coutinho would sometimes captain the side as he showed true professionalism and clearly enjoyed playing in this evolving, improving team that Klopp was happy to have him in despite what had gone on before. But those things had gone too far, and by the time of the January window opening Liverpool didn't seem too displeased to bank £142 million for a player who had always been that little bit more about the individual at a time when the team was taking shape. Coutinho had left behind a Liverpool team which had finally become comparable to that 2013-14 side he shone in, with the Firmino Mane Salah trio helping him perform in a similar but different way that Gerrard Suarez Sturridge did. Looking fitter than he ever had before, his 2017-18 remained brilliant, and he scored 10 goals in his first half-season with Barca to take his tally to 22 in 42 across his two clubs, almost double any other return he's managed in a campaign. He went into the World Cup every inch one of Brazil's best players, scoring 2 crucial group stage goals as he was there, and there was a real sense that the stage was set for him to dominate in Barcelona, where he was being billed as the long-term replacement for Andres Iniesta. We all know what has happened since. So should Coutinho never have left Liverpool? Almost certainly on a personal level, even if there is a question mark over whether he'd have fitted into the more workmanlike midfield that Klopp built his Champions League and ultimately Premier League winning sides on. Should Felipe Coutinho link up with Steven Gerrard at Aston Villa? Comment below. It would be interesting to get his take on that 2017-18 half-season and whether or not there was a temptation to rip up what was clearly an agreed transfer as Anfield progress began to bear fruit and he looked capable of hitting a new level as a player at a time when it had seemingly been decided he could only do that elsewhere. After these lost years of his career, it is perhaps no surprise that he is looking to come back to England to recapture some of his spirit, something that perhaps Gerrard can remind him of at Aston Villa, even if it is only a short-term move. Liverpool, sadly, looks off limits for him now though, with Coutinho a casualty of timing and a desire to look backwards not forwards, something that Klopp has largely eradicated from a club that used to spend far too much time in the past. You can have regrets, but you have to walk on.